And welcome back to Moving Conversations. I'm Brian Ritchie. Joining me as always is Nora St. John. Morning, Nora.
Hi, Brian. How you doing?
Doing good, doing good. Survived the storm and everything seems to be okay. As always, for those who are listening, we're recording this soon after the massive storm hit. I think it was over half of the country from Texas all the way through
Yeah,
New
like
England.
200 million people were under a winter storm watch.
Yeah, I heard that there were like 800,000 people out of power in
Yeah,
just Tennessee
yeah.
alone, and we didn't lose power, but we got about a foot of snow and ice outside, and uh, I had to deal with a flat tire on my truck in the middle of a sleet storm and had to replace that. So, everything's an adventure. So I just look at it as that. I survived, and we are now on the other side of it. So that's good.
Excellent. Well, I have sunshine to report since I've been talking about the fog here in California for the last empty weeks. So I'm very happy it's sunny today and it's a beautiful day. So I'm looking forward to a little time outside.
Yeah, very cool. I come to Sacramento tomorrow, so I'm looking forward to it being a little bit warmer than this morning when I woke up. Believe it or not, it was 2 degrees. And yeah, I left the house. I looked at that. I said, that can't be right. There's got to be a 3 in front of that 2 or a 4. Gotta be. No, 2 degrees. It
Well,
was.
add 50 to that and you'll get the temperature it is here.
Yes, that's what I'm looking forward to. I know I'm looking at what I need to pack and I'm thinking I can pack a little warmer. This is okay. I'm cold sensitive, but I can pack a little warmer. So I'm looking forward to that.
Absolutely. All right.
So today, we wanted to talk a little bit, building on to our last conversation where we had Elizabeth Larkam, which was fantastic. If you have not listened to it, please check it out in the archives. And while you're there, do us a favor, hit that like and subscribe button. We really appreciate it. Comment, post, repost, all of those things. We really appreciate it. You can check us out on Instagram, Moving Convos, or movingconvos@gmail.com is the best way to get in touch with us. And without further ado, let's talk about that. But that episode was really, really good. I loved it.
It was such a good conversation. And, Elizabeth is just such a deep font of knowledge, history, thoughtfulness. She's been doing this for 40 years and it's just, and she's been doing it with intention and attention for 40 years. And it really shows. And it was just such a lovely conversation. Really, really appreciated it.
That word intention it means so much to me because I think we all, when you've been working with the same clients or a certain population for a long period of time, it's easy to get into a routine. I'm not going to call it a rut, but a routine. You're still adjusting things. You're still making sure they're going on their way to their goals. But you get caught up in conversations sometimes. You get caught up in all of that sort of thing. And you may not have the same amount of intention as we could with the exercise. And she brought me back around to that saying, I really get refocused with that, get really refocused. So I did notice that myself thinking, okay, yep, refocus with that intention. So that was a good reminder for me.
It is. And I think there's one story I sometimes tell. I had a client who I had for 16 years, twice a week, forever. I did acupuncture, we did body work, we did Pilates, we did the whole 9 yards. And at some point, I realized he asked me a question. He had some issue. And I said, well, let's go back to working on lumbopelvic stability. And he looked at me like, what's that? And, it's one of those classic moments of sometimes on both sides, they stop hearing and you stop pushing. Right. And that's just something to remind ourselves always. Loyal clients are wonderful. Clients you've had forever are wonderful. Sometimes you've got to say, hey, why don't you go work with so-and-so for a month just to get a fresh eye? Because I don't know about you, but how many clients, we both tell this story a lot, right, have come back from working with another instructor and gone, they gave me the best cue, or they told me, and you're thinking, I think I've said that 500 times, but you finally heard it, right? So sometimes a fresh voice, a fresh perspective just really changes their way of being.
Yeah. And that fresh perspective makes a huge difference sometimes because we can get focused on the minutia of whatever it is at that moment. I don't know about you, but a lot of times I'm sort of become not only the body detective, but the body mechanic. That they come in and here's what's broken this week. Here's what's
Yes,
broken this month.
absolutely. Yep.
And I happen to be good at that. So it's sort of
Yes.
like, all right, well, what happened? Da, 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 da. Okay, we're going to focus the workout toward that just to
Yep.
see what's going on. And I'd say 90% of the time, they call me the next day saying, I don't know what you did, but that was a miracle. It's like, well, it's not. We just sort of know the routine and we know sort of
Right.
the path to take, and it gets you there. It's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
Exactly.
if you're always in triage, it's
Uh-huh.
kind of hard to make that next step beyond that. And I think that's
Mhm.
important as well.
One of the teachers I worked with, Diana Harold, who I worked with at St. Francis, she had the most wonderful way of just continually pushing people.
Mm,
She was the nicest, kindest, most sort of feminine person I've ever worked with in a lot of ways. But boy, she would just keep moving forward. She really never rested.
mm,
Some teachers you see and you see them like sitting on the reformer next to the client, or in your case, sitting on the table next to their client, sipping a cup of coffee and talking about a movie. Right? It
right.
happens. We all know that.
We all
And she
do.
never did that. She was always paying attention. And she was always like, well, let's just do the next thing. Well, let's just do the next thing. And she really kept that forward momentum going. And I
Nice.
always really admired that about her. Like, no matter how many times she'd been seeing this client and how few things that client could actually do, because she tended to get a lot of the ones that were pretty, in severe shape, she always just kept it moving and kept open to the future. And it was really lovely to
Nice.
see, and a lovely model to pay attention to for me.
Nice. Nice. Well, you and I talked about this beforehand. We haven't really discussed much on group exercise
Right.
because it's not something that you and I have probably done on a regular basis in years. We all
Correct.
may step into someone else's shoes or at a conference or whatnot. We have to do that. You know, I was talking to someone and saying, "Oh yeah, I had a class of 150 people, and we're getting them to do exercise. How do you do it with that class that big?" And I say, "The best you can, because there's
Yes.
you just kind of have to go with it and hope everybody's following along because it's that big."
Yeah.
But that's really the extent of, I think, what you and I will do nowadays for group exercise, unless we are focused on that. But because we're so focused on also doing rehabilitation, special populations and whatnot, thought it might be a nice way for us to talk about that and how do we bring that into the group environment, because not everybody can really afford necessarily, one-on-one sessions, especially on a regular basis. So how can we take that to the next level?
Exactly. Because so many people, so many instructors come up to me and they say, I'm teaching at Club Pilates, or I'm teaching at another big group exercise place, or I'm starting group classes. I've got 8 reformers in my studio. And this
Mhm.
is the challenge I'm having. What is the challenge they always say? You've got multiple levels of people, right? I've got
Everybody's
Alice over
different.
there with spinal fusion. I've got Joe over there who just had a knee replacement. I've got Louise in the back who's got frozen shoulder. And that's just normal. Like, that is
Yeah.
what happens many, many days in these classes. Pilates, for better and for worse, and I'm speaking specifically to Pilates here, has a reputation for being helpful for special conditions.
Mhm.
Well,
Mhm.
yes. And that the group environment is not always the easiest place to get the work done that maybe your practitioner or the person who referred you to is hoping you can get done.
I think 40 years ago, 30 years ago, we weren't seeing the same populations continuing to exercise this late into their lifespan. You weren't
That's true.
having
Yeah,
60, 70-year-olds wanting to take a group exercise class. I think baby boomers have really changed that, because I know a lot of my baby
absolutely.
boomers, especially in this area. Okay, I'm in an area that, has a little bit more affluence, but they're like, I I have now retired. So now I want to have fun and what I want to do with my life. And I'm going to travel and I want to spend time with my grandkids and I want to play this sport, or I want to go hiking and I want to do this. And it's much different than years and years ago. When I think of my grandparents being 60 years old, oh my gosh, they were ancient, because at
Right.
60, they're having a hard time getting out of a chair and they're
Yep.
moving really slow. And
Yep.
now I look at my clients who are in their 60s and they're just getting going. They're thinking, oh man, I don't have to work full time anymore. I can travel, I can have fun. it's a different environment. And these are the people that are now coming to us and may be in your group exercise class, whereas they weren't 30, 40 years ago.
That's really true. That's absolutely really true. And one of the things too is, and there's a lot of research to back this up, that the expectations, physical expectations of people in their 50s, 60s, 70s has completely changed.
Big time.
With honestly, my generation and your generation, we just have completely different expectations about what our body will be able to do and for how long than certainly than our parents or our grandparents did. And because of that, and I always say this, then people show up at class and yeah, they may be in good shape and they're 65 or they're 72 and they're in good shape, but very often just getting to that point, they've had a knee problem or a neck problem or a shoulder or something that they're managing, managing better or worse, but that they're managing. So when they come into that class, you've got to oftentimes the instructor, because I've had to do this a few times in my life, on the fly go, okay, you're going to be over there. I'm going to change my entire program because those two people can't do these 3 exercises I was going to do. So, quick, rapid change in the brain. Okay, I'm going to go this way instead. And I'm going to make sure to tell them to do this and add a prop over there. Right. You've got to do that. You've got to do that re-evaluation quickly, right, and almost instantaneously, and then try to adapt everybody, make sure everybody's safe and everybody is having an effective workout. And it's a big thing. It's a challenge.
Oh, it's a challenge. When I was teaching more group exercise, around this time of year, you would have all the newcomers come to a class.
January. Yep.
Right. And all the regulars are used to a lot more high intensity, or they're used to their routine, which my group exercise back then was a lot high energy. You're doing things that an average beginner may not do. So like you said, on the fly, you learn how to, okay, now you 3, I want you to do this. And everybody else, we're going to be doing this. And it's one thing to be doing it with a beginner versus an intermediate or advanced. It's another thing when you have a very specific population that may not be able to bend their knee as much, or may have a frozen shoulder, or may have, whatever it is. And they show up and you're thinking, you really should be doing a one-on-one. You really shouldn't be doing a class, but you don't want to kick them out either, because awesome that they're there. And you want to be able to get them to do something and feel part of the class without feeling excluded from everything.
And it may be what they can afford, right? Especially in Pilates, group training too, but particularly in Pilates, it's very expensive and privates are very expensive and not everybody can afford maybe ever to do a private. So all they've got is the group experience. Now, I've got a bunch of suggestions. And again, I know a lot of these are not practical in every situation. So, we'll talk about some of these things. And this is going to be one of our strategy sessions. So Brian will say something, we'll kind of go back and forth on a bunch of thoughts that we have. One of the things that is helpful is knowing who's coming to class. So, oftentimes you're going to have, if you've taught group exercise for any period of time, you'll have some regulars typically in most classes. And maybe it's half the class, maybe it's 2/3 of the class, maybe it's a big transition time for a lot of reasons. So there's a whole bunch of new people all the time. And some of it is really looking at who are my regulars, because I always would look like who's in my class today and just make sure I know who's coming, because that would already set the tone a bit for me. Like then I can start to plan ahead and know what's happening. Now, certainly in a lot of the group studios, you're going to have maybe, let's say I've got 10 reformers. You may have 6 students who pretty well, you kind of got a sense of what their thing are, and then 4 new people, or at least people you haven't seen before. So then I'm this is just my own mentality, but I'm going to gear the class towards those 6 regulars. And I know that sounds a little funny, but if I always am gearing my group class towards whatever random new people show up, I lose my regulars. So just as a kind of, and not that I'm going to exclude the new people, but I want to try to bring the new people into the group. Yeah, because that's a lot of what I find in group classes of any kind is it creates community. And if you can really create community, then you have longevity, and then you have people who keep coming, right? You have compliance, and you have a regular steady clientele. So those are just some things to think about. It's like, remember who that main group is. And especially if you know their conditions already, figure that out. Then the next thing is with new people, I always come in early to class. I'm always hanging around, greeting the people that I know. And if somebody new comes in, it's like, hey, hi, I'm Nora, I'm the teacher, blah, blah, blah. Are there any things that you're dealing with that I should know about? Like anything that I need to be aware of? And I try to get that information ahead of time. The
Mhm.
worst situation is where you got three new people who show up at the last minute or even after class has started, and they lie down on the reformer or whatever you're doing and they start working, and 5 or 10 minutes in they go, oh, I just had a knee replacement, or oh, I have a light, whatever, right?
Yep.
And that happens, and that is so challenging, those moments.
I like that. I think filtering is important
Hmm.
because in an environment like this, it is important to meet people who are new, talk to them, and at least get a brief understanding of any of their limitations,
Right.
because that's going to really help me dictate what I'm going to do with them. Now, for me, I'll be honest, I prefer not to teach in a group environment, especially when I have, because I'm known for rehabilitation. So most of the people that come to me are going to be doing that. But I've had husband and wife, for instance, say, we want to train together, which is a duet. Sure. Well, you have one who's 6'2", the other who's 5 foot nothing. One has had a knee replacement. The other has currently active frozen shoulder. You can just go down the laundry list of things. Well,
Exactly.
it's very
Uh-huh.
difficult to have them do a similar-ish workout when their needs are so different. And in a
Exactly.
group, and so a lot of times I will say, okay, I prefer not to do that because I want to give each of you a good experience and make sure that we're not just focusing on one and not the other, or vice versa. And in a group environment, what I find is it's challenging sometimes unless you do that filtering as they walk in, and you can sort of keep an eye or be willing to say, you know what? I want you to be right up here, right up front, right by me. So I can guide a little bit more for this person. Now, I'm not going to give them a one-on-one while everybody else gets a group, but I will say, okay, on this one, don't do one-legged. I want you to do two. I'll make sure you keep both feet on the foot bar while I'm still, but I can sort of whisper to them or talk to them and be closer to them than the rest of the class. I know a lot of times they want to be in the far back where no one can see them, but I want them up front so I can help keep them safe. Because the last thing I want is for them to walk out of there in more pain or more discomfort than they walked in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So a couple of other thoughts that I've had and things that I've done with various classes that I've run. One is to have a focus for the class. And
Mm.
this helps me anyway. And I know a lot of people don't work this way. They just do a general, workout, which is fantastic. But I really find if I can just set a focus, even for myself, for like that month's classes. Let's say I'm going
Mhm.
to focus on the shoulder and how the shoulder works, or the low back, or the hips, or the knees, whatever I'm going to focus on. And then I really plan out, like, for that month, even though not everybody's going to come to every class. I kind of plan a way of saying, okay, let's introduce this concept, work with that concept for a week or two. Let's add this concept in. Now we're going to work with that concept for a week or two. And
Mhm.
really, that's both educational. It also allows me to then really focus on the people in the class who might have an issue related to that body part, and to kind of really bring them in and focus on their issue while everybody else is getting a lot of the same information. And I've done that with, I teach a lot of instructors, as many of you know. Many of you, I'm sure, have been in my classes. And a lot of times I'm teaching a class on a specific topic, right? I'm
Mhm.
teaching a class for low back pain. I'm teaching a class focused on the shoulder or focused on mobility or whatever I'm doing. And if I really keep that focus in mind, I find if I do that, and if they all know that, like, this is what we're doing this month, then that helps all of us to work together to the same goal. Even if so and so's doing it on a red, so and so's doing it more lightly, so and so's not using the springs at all, like, whatever, I can kind of
Mhm.
moderate that more easily. So anyway, that's one thought that I've had in terms of bringing special populations into a group environment.
Now, that actually leads into what I've done in the past. When I first learned post-rehabilitation, people that I learned from, they had something that came from the physical therapy world, which were called back classes, where they
Mm-hmm.
would all start. There would be education component, there would be workout component, and it
Yeah.
would be 4 weeks long, 8 weeks long. You could design it to be whatever, however long you wanted, but there had to be an educational component. So you're really educating them about their condition. And then you're taking them through specific exercises based on that condition. Now you can do shoulder, you can do knee, you can do hip, you can do any of the issues that are out there, but it's a way to keep the number smaller. So you could limit it to 4 people or 6 people or 8 people, however many you feel comfortable with. But you could really focus on a specific issue
Mm-hmm.
and work it that way. Now that's very much purely rehab oriented, and it can be very beneficial and can be very lucrative as well, because as soon as people realize that you're doing these sort of back classes, oh my gosh, it's because group exercise for low back pain. Oh, that's exactly what I need. And so you can become lucrative. The problem is losing the clients that you're seeing one-on-one who are coming to you for low back pain, who are now, I can pay a tenth of the price and get the same exercises or similar. So there's some of that you have to sort of weigh out in your own practice.
Mm-hmm.
But in doing these, you also find there's some limitations involved as well, because everybody is at a different level. Some people are ready to move on and some people are moving really slow. So that becomes a challenge as well.
I think too, I think that's a great idea. And I think, again, I know this doesn't work in every group environment, but I really do feel like there is a place in the group environment for things like a 4 week back focused class or a
Mm-hmm.
4 week shoulder focused class. I think you could make a play. I think you could make that lucrative and make that successful. I actually think you bring in different clients, which again, not every studio wants to bring in different clients, that what I think would eventually feed your private practice, if you want to go into private practice or semi-private, duets and that kind of thing. I think it would also help legitimize you as somebody who knows something, right?
Mm-hmm.
That you're not just,
Absolutely.
a cute, bouncy group exercise person up there who's got a lot of personality, but that you actually really have some information and you have some knowledge. And one of the things that I've said before, I'm not sure I've said on this podcast, but one of the things that I know was true in how I ran my studios when I was running it was because students were getting educated and clients were getting educated, they kept coming back. I could not get rid of
Mm-hmm.
clients. They came forever. And I was looking at the studios down the street, which were doing group classes and were basically being repetitive group classes in a particular format. And they had Groupons going all the time and class
Mm-hmm.
passes, and they had a constant churn of clients. I did not have a churn of clients at all. I couldn't
Yeah.
get them to go when I needed them to. So I really think that educational component and making it specific and making it purpose driven, however you do that, is incredibly valuable as a retention tool for clients.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The legitimacy aspect is really important, especially when you're getting started.
Yes.
So I know even for myself, just to be established when I was first getting into a club environment, and people started to know that, oh, he's the post rehab guy. Oh, I was booked and couldn't get rid of people, and I had
Yeah.
people hounding me. The squeaky wheel sort of thing, saying, "Do you have any time this week? Do you have any time this week?" And it was relentless. And this was
Yep.
in a club. So when I went out on my own, I was very frightened that, oh, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get clients. But over time, word of mouth does spread because you have lent yourself a lot of legitimacy to doing that. Now, if you had your own studio where you could do a small class where you could do 3-4 people, if you have enough reformers, or if you just have enough space to do it on the floor or whatever, having those specialized groups can be invaluable for
Mhm.
them as well as for you in the
Yeah.
community. Because as soon as physical therapists know, oh, he does a back class and he's focusing on right now on people with this issue. Oh, absolutely. Let's send, I have all of these people. I'll send them to him, because they are literally looking to get rid of these clients, to get them out the door so they can have new ones come in, and you could easily be where they're sending people.
That's a really good point. And I think we all we haven't talked a lot at this podcast about just creating those relationships with other rehabilitation professionals. But I know that's where so much good collaboration comes through
Hmm.
and so much good information goes back and forth when I'm really working with a good PT or a good chiropractor or a good massage therapist. It just makes such
Hmm.
a big difference and can really improve clients' outcomes so quickly. But I love this idea of really saying, like, I'm putting together every month you do a different focus, like, 2-hour class four times during the month on the shoulder.
Hmm.
And some of it's education or information, and some of it's exercise, so that students come away with a home program with a lot of information about their body, because there's some assessment along the way.
Hmm.
And that just helps the PTs and the rehab professionals have somewhere to graduate people to. Yeah,
Yep.
and then it can also
Yep.
build your private practice in the same thing. So I love that whole cycle of that.
Yeah. And you use a perfect word, graduate.
Yeah,
I think a lot of my clients, when they start physical therapy, some of them do have the intention of there's an end date, but there are some clients who just sort of feel like this is what I'm always going to be doing. This is what we're going to be
right.
doing.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like, no, this is not a forever
Not what it's
thing.
designed for.
No. So they are
Yeah.
always looking. And I've got a number of physical therapists who send people to me and chiropractors who send people to me. It's you're ready to go on. And here's someone who can help you with that. And once they realize, oh, okay, and I'm in safe hands, I'm not going to get hurt. Now, in the environment where people can't afford one on one, the group atmosphere is a great place to start because you can say every month we start a new class. And it's, oh, perfect, awesome. We're going to start you off next month, this time, da 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 da. And it can be really beneficial. And again, it doesn't have to be just the back. You can do the shoulder, you can
Yeah.
do lower body, you can do any of these things. Because I hate to say, but a lot of knee issues, you're going to be doing similar-ish exercise.
Yes,
I'm not saying a
exactly.
generic exercise, but similar-ish that you could say, oh, we have 2 replacements here and 2 meniscal tear operations. Okay, cool. We can sort of gear toward that when you know the difference between them. But in general, a lot of the exercises, especially weeks 2 and 3, are going to become very similar to one another.
Exactly. And I mean, the main difference there is just if you're dealing with a low back issue where there really is a flexion bias or an extension bias. But even
Bingo.
that, even that's a pretty simple, like, okay, you're going to do this way. You're going to do this way. Like, there's a pretty easy A and B versions of the
Yep,
exercises. And that makes that pretty straightforward in a lot of ways. Um,
exactly.
yeah. And this can go into a group exercise class. Yeah, I mean, we're talking about more of
Mhm.
a small group kind of situation with or without equipment. But in a group exercise class with a lot of people, you can also say, hey, our focus for this month is going to be on the low back. So we're going
Yep,
to talk about neutral. We're going to talk about how you engage the glutes. We're going to talk about balancing the two sides of the body. We're going to talk about oblique, whatever you're going to talk about. And then those can be the focus for the month. And if you know you have a focus, you can also then gear, okay, you 3 people, you new people, you're going to be right in front of me. I love that, Brian. That always works
yep.
best. Or you guys are going to be here. People that know what they're doing can be over there, and you guys can go on to that. You guys can go on to that. We're going to focus on some of these basics.
Yep. And I like the fact that you use the word focused rather than we're going to be doing rehab specific exercises, because there are some people who don't consider themselves, I need rehab. Yet, let's face it, most of the people that come to me, I've been working with for years, we're still working that direction because remember, whatever you've had, if you've had a knee replacement, you've always had a knee replacement. You have to keep that in the back of your head. That's not going to change. If you
Yeah.
had a frozen shoulder, that's not going to change. You may have recovered from it, but there may still be limitations that are still lingering. And it's something that needs to be in the back of our mind. When you say we're going to be focusing a lot on the low back this month and working on stability or working on mobility or focus, when you use those words, it doesn't necessarily have to be we're going to be focusing on rehab. We're going to be focusing on the low back and really fine tuning the core in a very specific way. Oh, okay. Or it's now spring. We know you're going to be out in the garden a little bit more. and you're going to be using your upper body a little bit, pulling weeds and all of that. We're going to do a little bit more upper body, but let's build a foundation first. So let's start off with some of the rotator cuff stuff and focus a little bit on the shoulder and keeping healthy shoulders.
Exactly.
Oh, okay. Healthy. I like that idea instead of, yeah, we're going to be focusing on shoulder rehab this month, because some people are just like, no, tune out.
Right. No, then that's a great way to bring everybody in and
Yeah.
to make it about their long-term health, right? On all sides, wherever they come into, whatever, like,
Yep.
because again, somebody who is in great physical shape, has no back issues today, can still learn something from how to understand dynamic lumbar-pelvic control or lumbar mobility. Like, they can still learn something from that may be helpful for them in maintaining the good health that they have. So yeah, absolutely. Like, just put it as our focus is the shoulder this week or this month.
Yeah.
And work with that. And then for those of you instructors out there who this all feels like slightly daunting, like, how would I do that? And I don't know what exercises I do. There's a couple things that I'll often say. And one of them is, this is going to sound funny, but it's actually true. You can do exactly the same workout and focus on almost anything. So literally, I could do a basic, whatever your basic version of a intermediate reformer program is, for example. And I could focus that on their core and their low back position and their abdominal engagement and their spinal mobility. I could take that same workout and focus on their hip placement and their pelvis and their leg alignment. I could take that same workout and focus on their shoulder placement. So you also have that ability to really focus through your cueing, because in a group environment, all you've really got is cueing, right? Is how I'm going to focus on bringing their attention to different parts of the movement, different exercises, and then focus them in on that while they're doing it.
Bringing that back to that word intention.
Yep.
Whatever your intention is, I can take a simple exercise, no matter what it is, and have, through my cueing, different intentions. And I can turn a lower body exercise into a core stability exercise just through my own cueing. Because now we're gonna be working on hip mobility, but what I want you to focus on is your spinal. I can put my focus into a certain space through my language, even though we're still doing a lunge, a squat, all that kind of stuff that's very basic. Or on the reformer, if we're doing footwork, I can still be cueing them for their spine, or I can change it up and now cue it for their hip or cue it for their knee. You do it through your language, and it's all about your intention through language that can really take them to that goal that you're looking for.
And I think that's just a useful thing for any of you who teach group is using your language is what you've got. That's the tool you've got. You're not usually demonstrating stuff much, right? You're not usually demonstrating. You don't have a lot of, you can't do a lot of hands-on. It's really all verbal. And the clearer you get at that, the better you get at that, the more effective you're going to be. And to Brian's point, a whole lot of your job, or at least this is how I take my job as a teacher, you may take it differently. A whole lot of my job is to draw the class's attention to the area I want them to focus on. So, let's focus on where your heels are hitting the footbar. Let's focus on how your low back is coming in contact with the carriage. Those are the moments of teaching and of focus. And again, if you can draw your client's attention to an area, you often then will allow them to feel like, oh, that doesn't feel so good. Maybe if I do this, it's better. So if they're paying attention, they can also make better choices and self-correct, which is a really useful thing, which attention brings them.
And as a group instructor, that's what separates, mediocre from great.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've been in some classes before where you can just tell the instructor is going through the motions. They have their repertoire, they have their choreography. We're going to do these 10 exercises, and here's how we're going to do them. And they say the same thing each time they do it. And you can tell they're bored with it.
Right. Absolutely.
But when you put your phrasing and your intention, and you really draw their attention toward a specific thing and a specific goal for the exercise, and you're teaching them, why are we doing this exercise? I chose this one because this weekend here and there, we just had this massive storm. So guess what? I know a lot of you were outside shoveling. So I bet a lot of your low backs are a little tight. So we're going to focus a little bit on spinal mobility today. So we're still doing bridges. bridge is a bridge is a bridge. There's 50 different ways to do it, but I'm going to put their attention more into, okay, do you feel that lengthening now? We're lengthening the lumbar spine. Good. Can you reach out through your knees more? Can you really feel your spine rolling down? All of these cues that are specific for spinal mobility because they need to lengthen that. I can begin to cue more for that. And that's what is going to separate the good from the great, or mediocre from the great.
Always. And one of the things I loved about talking to Elizabeth is, again, I've been in many of her classes and watched her teach many, many times. And her specificity of cueing is just superb. Just superb. And her ability to
Mhm.
draw your attention to an area you may have never thought of. Like, oh, look, I'm thinking about my back upper ribs. When was the last time I thought about them? Maybe never.
Mhm.
And just drawing your attention to an area, which as soon as you focus on an area, and this I think is true for anybody who can focus on something, or some clients can't, but those who can, that gives you information. As soon as you pay attention to something, like, I never thought about that. Does that feel better to be more rounded, or does that feel better to be more extended?
Mhm.
Oh, this feels better. And it allows you that opportunity to make changes.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I say, it all comes back to whatever comes out of your mouth is all that they can do in a group environment. You're not going to be hands-on, at least not in the same way as you are with a one-on-one. So language
Right.
is the one tool you have. So that is the other thing that I'm going to say is, as a group instructor, you have to be even more specific with your language than anybody doing a one-on-one session needs to be. Because let's face
Absolutely.
it, my hands are my shortcut. I can walk behind
Mhm.
someone and I can touch their scapula with one finger and say, I want you to focus here. I'm now drawing their attention to that. In a group X environment, I would have to say, I want you to feel the bottom corner of your scapula. Can you feel that? Now, the muscles attaching there, I want you to think about pulling those together. There's a lot more language involved, and I need to get better at that in order to get my point across rather than just going, boop, right there. This is where I want you to focus. I want these 2 points where my fingers are, get them closer together. Again, my hands become a shortcut and I use them all the time. So when I do have to teach a larger group, I do find myself, I got to stretch my vocabulary a little bit. I have to really stretch my words to get the point across.
I also recommend, although we don't always do it, but I recommend too, recognizing whether your cues are actually successful or not.
Ah, yes.
Because there's so often when I'm thinking of, I've watched many, many people teach over the years, but watching one particular teacher teach, she had the spiel down. She was
Hmm.
saying all the right things. This was in her test out. None of them were landing on the client.
Oh.
Like, none of them. She like, and they're gonna do this, and they're gonna do that, and I feel this, and blah, 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 blah." I mean, she didn't stop talking either. So the client was just getting sort of overwhelmed by words, but she just kept going. And it was like she didn't pay any attention at all to whether anything she
Uh-huh.
said was actually reflected in the body she was looking at.
Hmm.
And that's true in a one-on-one situation. In a group situation, it's even more true because you're going to throw out a cue, a shotgun cue, and it really is like a shotgun cue. Now, some people, that cue lands perfectly and they make the change you want
Hmm.
them to make. Other people, that's actually the wrong cue for them and they overcorrect in another direction. Other
Yes.
people just aren't paying attention at all, right? You've got that whole swath. So one thing I often say there is, okay, guys, right side of the room, you guys think about this. Left side of the room, you guys think about this.
Oh, nice.
Just somewhat arbitrarily, and I'll also just give different cues, right? So
Hmm.
the other thing I cannot recommend highly enough for everybody who teaches the kind of stuff that we do is have 100 ways to say anything,
Exactly.
right? Like, not just drop your shoulders, not just put your shoulders in your back pocket, but take your shoulder blades, slide them down your rib cage, take it, like, all the ways that you can say the same thing.
Hmm.
Because again, sometimes one will land with half the group and one will land with the other half of the group. You don't know who that's going to be.
Yep.
So, having multiple ways to say the same thing is critical.
And I will say this, if you take another person's class, steal.
Exactly. Still from the best. If you
I,
find a
I
cue and like it, do it.
Absolutely. It's like the great steal from everybody else. And it's true. I remember I was sitting in on a course by Nico Gonzalez. He was teaching a course and, we were at a conference and I was sitting in the back of the room and he said, one of the cues. And I was like, I love that. And I went up to him later saying, I'm stealing that. He laughed and he said, oh, I got it from so-and-so. So we're literally all using
Yes.
each other's languages. And
Yes.
that works. But again, how many times have you been in front of people? One thing doesn't land. Next thing doesn't land. Third thing doesn't land. You have to keep going, because if you don't, you either give up on the exercise because they're just not going to get it, or people, what I see a lot of teachers do is just give up and just, well, fine, screw it. Okay, just let them do the exercise. And they let it go instead of making sure that it really lands with them. Because if you just let it go today, they may be ingraining those bad motor patterns for the next time you have them do the same exercise. So now it's like, I was guilty of that with one client, and they came back to me and they were still doing it wrong. And I thought, oh, so literally re-education began. Well, why didn't you teach me this before? I said, yeah, I should have, but it took us 4 sessions. I gave up too soon. And I realized that it was years ago, and I got him back and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, they're still doing the exact same pattern. Well, sometimes we need to just dig deep and keep going and keep digging until we get what we are looking for. So you need to have, like you said, 101 ways to say the same thing, or find another way to do the exercise so that they can be successful, and then almost a regression to get them to progress. Take a couple steps back. I say, it's a cha-cha. You take a step back to go forward. You don't just always move forward. So sometimes you have to do that. And it's okay to do that even in the group environment, where you say, okay, we're going to try this for a second, then we're going to go forward. It's okay to, but you need to have 1,001 ways. Absolutely.
You do. And to your point, when something really just isn't happening, and I've had this experience a few times where you decide the group should be doing this, and you give them the cue you think is going to work, and it is absolutely not working. Like nobody is doing what you want them to do. And you can fight it. You can try to give it a couple shots to try to improve it. And then there's also a good point to just go, let's go on to something else and just drop it. Right. And know that, like, in your mind, okay, I've got to come back to that in another way at some other time, but I've got to let it go now because it's not going to be any good right now. One other thing that I wanted to say about working with different levels in a class, and I say this all the time. I'm going to say it again because I think it's absolutely the right thing to say. If you have a really mixed level class, like you've got 6 people that have been coming forever and know everything's going to come out of your mouth before you say it and are pretty proficient, and you've got a couple more that are coming along, and you've got a couple more that are really not getting it at all. If you have that situation and you want to provide a workout for those people who are more proficient and not leave out the rest of them, what I always say is, like, as the instructor, I'm going to show or cue the beginner version. And whether this is a mat class and I'm showing it, or whether it's a reformer class and I'm talking it through, I'm going to cue and focus and start everybody off with the beginner version, for example, that I know these guys over here can do, these 4 guys can do. These 6 guys are going to get bored pretty quickly. And then I can say, okay, you guys who know more, add this piece, and I just give them the verbal cue for it.
Nice.
So it's not something they already know, like, okay, you guys are going to go on to single leg, for example. You guys are going to go on to doing this turned out or whatever. And you guys are going to stick with what you're doing. Right. And so and again, you can't really do more than 2 groups roughly like that, but I've done that a lot. And the key thing there is, if you've got real beginners or people you're concerned about in the class, you need to model for them, and you need to cue for them, and know that those who know more and can do more, you can throw out a cue for them, like add this or add that or whatever, or go on to the next thing. But you've really got to model for the beginners. Otherwise, those who don't know what they're doing are going to try to follow everybody else and often screw themselves up. So that's something I'm always a little cautious of.
And that's something we have to be mindful of, because people will parrot whatever you're doing. So if you're only showing the higher level stuff, even though you're saying you guys stay with 2 legs and you start modeling the 1 leg, guess what? The people are going to say, well, I think I can do that. And they're automatically, or how many times have you seen this in a class? They're just not paying attention, not with their ears.
Right.
They're watching, but they're really not taking it in with all of their senses, because they're overloaded already, because especially if it's new. And they're really trying to take it in, and all they're doing is watching. Well, when you go to 1-legged, they think I need to do that too. even though you
Right.
just said stay with both legs. So what you
Right.
said is great. Reverse it. Stick with what they are doing because they're going to be watching like a hawk because they're the ones who are, who are
They don't know
new
what
at
they're
this.
doing yet.
They don't know what they're doing. And the more advanced people, they kind of do. And if they've been with you for a while, they probably know the routine-ish that you can say, go to single-legged, go to this, go to that. And they're going to say, oh, okay, I can do that. And they can move on safely. So that's a great idea.
One other thing I have, again, these are problems. We're doing problem solving here. One other thing is one challenge, certainly with rehab oriented clients in a group class, and this has happened more than once for me, and I'm sure it's happened for you, is that client wants all of your attention. So you're in a class, excuse me, but blah, 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 right? I can't do this because da, 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 da. And you've got options there. The challenge, of course, is many of us want to make that person happy because they're the squeaky wheel, as it were. But I know that if I make that person happy and spend my whole time, and then the other 9 people are going to be looking at me like, why are we here? What's happening? I'm getting bored. This isn't about Alice's private session.
Yep.
So, so one of the things with that is in the moment to be able to say, hang on, like hold that question and let's talk after class. Like just being very
Exactly.
clear. Don't say it with any frustration. Just like, hey, thank you for, you've got a lot of really good questions, but in this environment, I can't really take time to answer that because we have to keep moving, but let's come talk after class. Right. So just find ways to just do that, to redirect, if you will, the noisy
Redirect.
wheel. Yeah. And then the other thing is then after class, talk to them and say, and do not be afraid. And I'm sure different studios have different policies on this. So if I'm going against your studio policies, forgive me. But if you need to fire somebody from a class or tell them they can't come, that's actually you have the right to do that. And you need to take advantage of that in certain situations. If somebody's absolutely not, and I'm thinking of one client particularly who was in some group classes with me for a while, and she had more things going on than I could possibly imagine. I think she had lumbar spinal fusion. She had a hip replacement. She had some cervical issues. She was looking at a cervical spinal fusion, and she insisted on doing everything in the class. And I'm like, this is just not appropriate for you. And she wouldn't take my cues or anything. And I basically had to say, I'm sorry, but I can't let you come to class anymore. This is not appropriate for you. And she was, she was sort of furious, and she was, I'm sure she badmouthed me on social media, which fortunately there wasn't much of then. But I was like, I can't be responsible for you. You're not responsible for yourself, and I can't be responsible for you. And you are kind of a walking time bomb. So anyway, I know that's a little extreme, but those will happen. And if there's really a client who just should not be there, you need to have that difficult conversation or have your studio manager have that difficult conversation.
100%. You need to keep them safe, even if it's safe from themselves.
That's your job. Exactly.
Because there's a lot of people, and you and I have done this many times when we taught our classes, and I've had people say, but I really want to do this. But I really want to do this. And finally, I had to tell them as instructors, you can do anything you want. That is your body. You've got this issue. But if you continue down this path, there are going to be consequences, both positive and negative. And as long as you're willing to go down that path and suffer or, achieve those consequences, fantastic. That is up to you. I am not going to wake up tomorrow morning in the pain that you're going to be in. So for me, it really doesn't make a difference. So for an instructor, this is what I've told them. For a client, you have to really choose your words carefully, because I've had to do this with clients who really want to take yoga, for instance, and they've got several herniated discs in their lumbar spine, and they want to do wheel and all of this back, all of these exercises that are contraindicated for their condition. And you just have to say, this is probably not the best idea for you. Now, there are some exercises that you can do once we get you stable, but certain exercises within the traditional repertoire of yoga probably are not going to be the wisest for you. And I can't trust that your instructor is going to understand what you can do. So here's what I need to do. And I need to involve them in here's your safe positions and here's your contraindicated positions. Now, can I do that in a group environment? No. I can't take that kind of time. So those are the moments where you have to talk to them afterwards and say, you are not in the position where you have a strong enough foundation or you have too many things for this level of class. There may be a level for you. I may not teach that level, or this may be an opportunity for you to maybe see me for 1 or 2 sessions so I can teach you about this. And then maybe you'll be ready to do the class. And I've actually had, when I was first getting into this, a number of people, when I've taught group exercise, because I'd have to fill in because I had experience with it. And I'd have a number of people afterwards say, oh, that was really challenging for this, this, and this. And I'd get them as clients afterward because they realized that they weren't strong enough, but their original teacher just didn't see it because they didn't have the same level of experience. Nothing wrong with that. They will eventually. So it gives you an opportunity to explain to them, here's what's safe, here's not. Let me have a couple of sessions with you so I can teach you what's safe so that you can be successful in the class that you want to take.
Now, with that in mind, because you're talking about contraindications basically, and how you deal with that, the biggest one for me, like the most major big red flag in my brain, is osteoporosis.
Yeah.
And the primary reason for that, much like you said with yoga, is the traditional Pilates repertoire. Much of the traditional Pilates repertoire is contraindicated for osteoporosis, especially when you add load to it and you add a group class where people are maybe going quicker than they would have otherwise and that kind of thing. So certainly at the very least, studios should know the status, the osteoporosis status of any client over, let's say 55, certainly 65. And they may want to offer an osteo specific or osteo safe workout, because there's fantastic safe workouts on the reformer. You just have to be careful of a few things and really adapt the traditional repertoire to accommodate for way less loaded flexion and rotation, that kind of thing. And I think that alone would be really a valuable safety thing for certainly the Pilates group community, is to have those classes available.
And talk about marketing. If you could have an osteo safe class, you could have a line out the door, because there's a lot of people who are in that category who do want to do Pilates, but they're told you cannot do flexion, you cannot do rotation.
Right.
And you look at the repertoire, like you said, and it's, oh my gosh, that's, 40% right there, out the door. Okay, exactly. Now what? But like you said, there's a lot that can be done. So if you can focus on that, oh my gosh, that right there, that's a huge selling point. Huge selling point. And you can keep them safe and get them to where they want to be and make them successful.
Right. And one of the things, I was talking to a teacher about osteoporosis the other day, and she said something really clear, which was Pilates may not improve bone density, but it decreases the likelihood of falling. It improves posture and decreases the likelihood of falling, improves balance, improves strength, improves support, all those kinds of things, all of which make it less likely that somebody will fracture. So again, it's like, what skills are you building? And I know personal training can usually do more weight and more resistance, and probably has, I know there's a very specific weight training program for osteoporosis, which can genuinely somewhat change bone density over time. But any of the work that we do that creates more confidence, more strength, more ability to balance, a better posture, all those things are going to, again, make it less likely that person will fall and fracture or cause trouble that way. Another special population class that I think is really useful is pre-post-natal.
Big time.
Because like the contraindications for certainly prenatal is like it changes about every semester, every trimester, and changes a lot. Like, okay, now I can't be prone. Now I can't be this. Now I can't be that. Now I have no hip flexion and no lumbar flexion. So, working through classes like that, I think, is another really great specialty that I'd love to see more group classes for pre-postnatal. I think it would just
And
be
there,
very successful.
yeah, there's a lot of resources out there, especially
A
for pre
lot.
and postnatal right now. I can't
Yeah.
tell you how many courses I've seen when I've been traveling at conferences and things like that, where there is a specialty on that. And
Yeah.
that is huge. And if you could do a class, and maybe you have a first trimester class or a second trimester,
Right.
or whatever you want to do, and especially post
Yes.
pregnancy is huge.
Yes.
That right there is an underserved market, to say the least.
Because I travel all over the Pilates world and I hear people talking about those classes, but I don't see them on schedules.
I don't either.
I see privates and that kind of thing, but really, one of my teachers in Oakland runs two things. She has a foundation mat class, which is an 8-week course. It's all mat and it's basically back safe mat stuff. She just teaches all the foundations of Pilates and all the breathing and all that stuff. And by the time students are done with that, number one, they often feel a whole lot better. And number two, they're absolutely ready for whatever the next step is. And so I just wanted to bring that up because I think that's a really nice way to do that and to get like a back safety into their foundation as a Pilates practitioner. But then like I keep looking for, again, maternal health. Like, how do you make these women safer? And I think a group class is really kind of critical for that because a lot of them, if they're having their first or their second child, can't afford anything else, either time-wise or money-wise. So anyway, so I want to encourage that for those of you who are out there. Start it up. Go for it. Do something. Get this going.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you can see that while there are some limitations in the group environment, I think more of the limitations are within the teacher, because if you really think about it, you can overcome a lot of these through modification, through specialization. You can actually create something that could set you apart and make you stand out rather than just be one of a million. And that, I think, is a great takeaway from today is, let's focus on that rather than, oh, we really can't do group exercise because you have this or you have that, or I don't want to teach a group exercise class with this person in it because of this or that.
I think so. A lot of tips and pointers today. Hopefully things for you to think about if you are a group exercise teacher or are thinking about it. I know this is very focused on Pilates, but a lot of it also does relate in the personal training space as well. Just think about it, and if this appeals to you, if you love teaching special populations and you want to make it more accessible to a wider variety of people, then think about running some specialty courses or running some specialty classes, and just find out how to do that. Work it out. You all have many of you have the information, and I'm here if you need more help.
Exactly. And if you don't, then people like Nora and I, we teach these kind of classes that we can help put you in the right direction. So, okay, here's how to keep these people safe while still getting them to succeed at their fitness challenges and goals.
Exactly.
So it can be done. All right. Well, I think we did a lot today. Thank you guys very, very much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Again, hit that like and subscribe button. We really appreciate it. And every comment you leave is highly appreciated by both of us. You can always reach out to us email, movingcombos@gmail.com. You can also do it through Instagram. Moving Combos on Instagram is probably where we're the most active. So for Nora St. John, I'm Brian Ritchie. We'll see you all next week.
I have one last thing, and don't forget the YouTube channel. Sorry.
Yes. Sorry. Yes. YouTube under my name, Brian Ritchie.
YouTube. Right. And again, you don't need to watch the podcast on YouTube, but Brian's posting a lot of shorts on there, a lot of little things. So
that's right.
Take advantage of that as well. All right. So thank you guys. Be well. We'll see you again next week.
Bye-bye.